Welcome to Partnerships for Profit, the podcast where we bring you inside the world of joint ventures, strategic partnerships, and powerful collaborations. Each episode, you'll dive into conversations with top entrepreneurs, visionaries, and business leaders, unlocking the secrets to building profitable relationships that drive growth and success. Whether you're looking to expand your network, find new referral partners, or scale your business, you're in the right place. Let's get started.
Welcome to Partnerships for Profit, presented by LeDuc Entertainment. Today we are joined by Gary Murray, a creative director, a filmmaker, a business strategist, and as we'll soon find out, so much more. Gary, it sounds like you wear a lot of hats, man. Welcome to the show.
I wear a few different hats, but thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. Thank you again. It's a pleasure to finally, get on the podcast. We've been trying to schedule it for a few weeks now, and I've been hearing good things about you from Armando. So,
oh, good. That's nice. Well, yeah, I mean, can we start off? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about all the different things you have going on?
Yeah, so originally from Cincinnati, Ohio, living in Brooklyn, New York now. I kind of come from a background of pretty much entrepreneurship, so that entails everything from like videography, filmmaking, web development, and right now a lot of AI implementation. But I've dipped and dabbled in a few different things, and I still do, a lot of those small things that I've dabbled in. But for the most part, a lot of my time is dedicated towards more of like the digital marketing side. AI is kind of taking over some of that, so the AI side of things too. So,
can you tell me about what sort of inspired you to get into this field, and what inspired you to get into filmmaking and digital marketing and all of this?
Yeah, well, I think it all comes down to one thing. It's really just storytelling. I think for me, I have always loved, helping other people tell their stories. And so what it really is like my passion lies in helping, how can I help you tell your story or better tell your story? How can I position you to best tell your story in terms of like more of the marketing strategy and like kind of how my brain works with that. But yeah, I mean, that's where it really is what inspired me. I think growing up, I always appreciated media and television. And, I think at a super young age, I was like, oh, I'd really love to be a film director. And, after growing up, like I'm doing some directing and, I do enjoy it, but it's like, I want to do more to help tell, stories.
Right. Where do you think that passion for storytelling comes from?
That's a great question. I think for me, it's a matter of we all have different backgrounds. We all, have different upbringings and, how you're able to articulate, your story, how you're able to articulate where you come from and the things that you've been through and things that you've overcome. I think everyone deserves to be able to understand that and be able to experience a version of that journey and of that process. Whether it be, through writing, whether it be through film, television, art media, wherever it may be, fashion. I think everyone deserves to be able to do that. And I think, growing up, this is something I've always loved. And even being maybe a misunderstood kid, it's like, I wanted myself and people around me to be understood. And, I think when I see conflict, when I see problems arise, often what gets to me is just the fact that, communication isn't there. There's not an understanding of, where, the two different parties may come from. So.
Yeah. And can you tell us, I mean, you have held a wide variety of roles on film sets, haven't you? And can you share some of that with us?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think, let me see, it first started off back in, was it 2016 maybe? Yeah, 2016. I came up to New York for a film with a buddy of mine and who we now have like a production company together that we work together on. And he simply asked me, hey, you want to come up to New York with me and help me shoot the short film? And I'm like, sure. I'd never done that before. I had some film classes, but I wasn't really a film major. So, it's not like I was, working on any of those like types of projects at the time. And so, we come up to New York and I really learned what it's like to really, put a project together, really tell a story and from a cinematic standpoint. And then, a lot of my course material was geared towards on the marketing advertising side. So, I was like kind of connecting those dots, and I was like, how can I better do that? And so coming out of college, I worked on a few other, you know, roles. We worked on a few other films together, me and my buddy, or a few buddies. It's called Upstream Pictures, by the way. Check us out. We have a few awesome short films out, and we're in the editing process for another one right now called Disco Fries. But I essentially just kind of hopped into the world, and then post college, I ended up getting one of my first jobs was an internship and with this film production company back in Cincinnati, Ohio, called Barking Fish Entertainment, which is now Lotus Shark, which is a PR agency. They've transitioned quite a bit since, but nonetheless, um, that's I worked with a producer. Her name's Amy McJersey. She's a super amazing woman. And she essentially brought me on set of like one of the films she was producing and said, "Hey, like, I'm gonna have you as like, the production assistant, but really I'm gonna, kind of have you doing almost, dipping and dabbing in every, as many departments as I can get
Right.
you in." I'm like, okay, sure. So from that very first film I get to work on with her, I get to do everything from, basic PA work to production coordinator work, production manager work. At one point I was sending out contracts to all the different crew members on set. So I really got to learn a lot. I got to tag the script and like, break down everything that we needed, for set, help out with scheduling. These are things that I had no business doing and I had no experience doing, but I was quickly gaining experience. And I ended up working on two other films with her while I was in Cincinnati, as well as a few other films while I lived in Cincinnati. And each one I just kind of soaked up experience. And then also doing it kind of independently as well. I was able to just kind of learn so many different roles. And I've just always kind of been someone who just wants to solve the problem. So wherever you need me is where I'm going to go.
Right.
But through everything, I think I've learned like my preferred position and role is definitely AD.
Mm.
As it comes to me just naturally, and it kind of works with both my creative mind and like my managerial mind. So it's like a perfect balance.
Well, and you strike me as someone that would be a good AD because normally ADs take a lot of heat because they're the guys running around, time, we got to keep time,
Yeah, yeah.
and so they catch a lot of slack from the rest of the crew. So, you strike me as somebody, you're a nice guy, a mellow guy. You strike me as somebody that wouldn't catch a lot of heat in that role, whereas other ADs often do catch a lot of heat.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with some cool ADs. I've worked with some not so great ADs, don't
Right,
get me
right,
wrong. But I think, it's, everybody has their own style of, helping to keep things moving and running. And it's, to me, it's like the more you can look ahead, the more that you can keep, communicate with everybody, let everybody know what we need to be doing next. It really, again, just communicating with the crew. Like if art department, is going to need, these props for the next scene that we're shooting, that's coming up, you know, let's make sure that they're getting that done, rather than, when it's time to shoot that, it's, we're getting those things. It's like, it's
right.
very simple communication is all it is to me. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was an AD a couple times, and I found that was not my ideal role. It was not a good fit for me. I was like,
Well,
everybody
you
stop
gotta,
yelling. All right.
yeah, you gotta kind of be willing to like, kind of not only like, deal with the yelling, because people are going to get mad at you, especially as the AD, because again,
That's
you're
the role.
literally,
Yeah.
yeah, but you also kind of gotta take it and know how to like dish it back out in a
Right. In a
receptive and
professional way.
respectful way.
Yeah,
Exactly,
exactly.
exactly. And so I don't think that it's something that you just master. I think it's something you consistently learn and
Right.
get better at. So
You
you know,
mentioned,
it,
yeah, go ahead.
no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, you mentioned disco fries, and I was just hoping you could shed a little more light on what disco fries is.
Yeah, so it's written by my two buddies from college, Roger Turner Jr. and Dylan Murphy. And essentially, it's short film. It's kind of like a romance, dark comedy romance. So essentially, our two main characters they end up they meet while in college, and they have their first date at this diner, like this old school classic New York diner. And they're talking, having great conversation, getting to know each other, and they end up having this, disco fries. I don't know if you understand what those are, but almost think like
Never heard
gravy
of.
cheese fries. Just think of like fries with as many like amazing toppings as possible. All it really is gravy cheese fries, but
Okay.
depending on what state and where you're from, they might do them a little differently. So
Sounds kind of like poutine.
maybe I don't know what is that. I don't know what that is.
Oh, that's Canadian version. That's like Canadian gravy and cheese curd fries or something like that. I don't know.
No, that it's pretty much that. It's
Yeah.
literally that, but I guess it's a different name. So that's why I said it's depending on where you're from. For me, like here being in like Cincinnati, Ohio, like being from there, like we would have like gravy cheese fries.
Mm.
In New York, it seems like they do like a little bit, maybe a little bit more like barbecue based. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But everywhere's a little different, nonetheless. But they share these gravy cheese fries, and then we end up seeing the story of how they fall in love, how they kind of get together, they get married, so forth and so on. But the problem is that they end up they're having trouble having a child, right?
Mm.
And one of the characters, the husband, he's a writer, and he doesn't really know how to express himself very well, and generally he expresses himself through his writing. So they kind of have like a separation, and like she's essentially reading one of his, during that time, she ends up reading one of his scripts, and she kind of enters like a script world,
Oh,
right?
interesting.
So yeah, we kind of shot this version of it where it's like, same characters, so forth, so on, but like we're in this like kind of alternate universe kind of thing. And it was really fun. And so we hop into that, and essentially throughout the film, we're seeing some not so great things happen between their relationship, and
Mm.
really it's just an expression of John's feelings. That's the male character's name, but it's just an expression of his feelings and how and his fears and what he's worried about, even though none of this is actually true. And he ends up having kind of like this glass onion-ish plot to have a hitman kill his wife,
Oh, wow.
and then he changes his mind.
Yeah. That's
So
interesting. That's
it's
interesting.
a yeah, it's a fun like funny like I said, dark comedy kind of story. We shot it back in November. Yeah, November this past November. And so it's in post right now. We're working on the notes for that, but pretty easy. Pretty easy shoot. It's with those same buddies with Upstream Pictures. We shot in Astoria, up in Queens, Brooklyn, down in Bay Ridge, as well as Sunnyside, Brooklyn. So not too many. Oh, and then Long Island up as well. There's the
Mm.
diner that we shot at in Long Island. So it wasn't too bad. Pretty
Nice.
easy like production. We did it in 4 days, I believe.
So what's your plan, once the film is wrapped? Are you going to hit the festival circuit, or are you?
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
gonna do it. Premiere party here is looking like May right now. Is what we're aiming for our premiere party. But we're gonna do premiere party in New York. And then yeah, we got a few festivals. We already
Sweet.
have a long list of festivals. The Austin Film Festival, one of the like more bigger ones. Um, and quite a few more. So we'll see where it goes. And ideally, we'd like to do a bigger version of it, a longer version of it.
Right. That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah.
And
So.
I want to talk about another project, one you directed. Can you tell me a little bit about The Wrong Way?
Yeah, so what was that? That was that 2021? Yeah, that was back in 2021. So I produced and directed The Wrong Way. So essentially, I worked with this amazing screenwriter named Jacqueline Robinson, based out in Baltimore, Maryland. And we came together, and she needed someone to help her, like, both produce and direct this film. And so, I came on board and pretty much, hit the ground running, and we came together, and it was my first time directing a feature, but it was quite a feat. I think we filmed it in a matter of months because we couldn't shoot every day as the actors were not, as it was still an indie project.
Right.
Um, Actors and crew were not always available. So we shot it over the course of about a month. And during that month, did everything from, getting the characters and the cast to, kind of come from being like these like shy, not so comfortable characters, people with each other to, being super comfortable to where at the end, as we kind of things kept having to change due to,
Right.
scheduling difficulty as per usual. It was, one of the most fun projects I ever worked on, actually. There's a lot of hoops, a lot of problems, a lot of ups and downs. I think even in post, we had lost some footage. Uh, but
No,
overall, it actually came out really well. And I was really, even now, I'm really proud of it. I did put it in a festival back a few years back when we first finished it back in 2022. And it did pretty well. It was, it was nice. It was fun.
nice.
Me and the director, we think we never really got to a common place on the final cut. But I think part of me, I ended up moving. She had a lot going on with her family, so it's one of those projects that like we completed and we're proud of it, but it didn't like kind of get any follow up.
Sure.
But it was still one of the best projects ever done.
I say I've been there, man, and especially when it comes to those weird little things like difficulty getting all the actors together. We had a guy that was one of the leads in a film we were shooting. This is back when I was in college. Dude had hair down to here. Halfway through the production, decides he's going to get all his hair chopped off.
No way.
So we're going like, okay, well, you didn't think about that, did you? You didn't think that. He's like, oh, I didn't even realize. Yeah, you didn't realize, bro. So we tried wigs, and then we were just like, you know what? We're just gonna have to put this on hold. Your hair grows. Don't get a haircut.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
we had to wait. Had to wait a good little while for that one. You have done directing work, you've done producing work, you've done AD work, all this work behind the camera, but you also do work in front of the camera. Can you tell me a little bit about the Golden King and what that is, and a little bit about your role in the upcoming Life on Bourbon? There's the plug for everyone.
Yeah, the German King. The German King was
the German King, not the Golden King. It's the German King.
Yeah, the German King.
I read my little cheat sheet down here wrong.
Okay, no worries. It is honestly. So I gotta start by saying I don't usually get in front of the camera. Like even this right now is a little. This is a little more normal. I've been starting to do a little bit more like podcast appearances and stuff, but not as usual. So acting in front of the camera is not something that I like. I'm usually trying to do, but it's something I just kind of stumbled into. Oftentimes, what happens is I'm working on set already behind the scenes, and they're like, "Hey, can we pull you into this role?" So in the German King, that was exactly what happened. I was a key PA, and everything's running, everything's cool. They actually ended up having me do a bunch of random things. They were like, "Hey, does anybody have like any dress shoes? We need some really nice." I'm like, "Hey, I got you." So I ended up using my dress shoes, and they're like, "We need this, we need that," and it was like super random PA stuff. And then they're like, we need somebody to play the soldier, this other soldier. And they're like looking around, and I'm like, and it was it's the German King is a short film. It's based on a true story, but it's about this Cameroonian king who essentially ended up betraying Germany during their rule of Cameroon, and it's the story of kind of how he was betrayed and how his son kind of eventually got power back and freed them from German control.
Oh wow!
But essentially, it was set in the setting was in Cameroon, but it was actually we shot it in Cincinnati. But essentially, the soldiers were Cameroonian soldiers, so they needed like someone on set who was black, and like I was probably the only one working on set black. So they were like, "Well, hey, do you want to do it?" I was like,
Yeah.
"Absolutely."
You by default.
Well, by default, by miracle, however you want to say it.
Right.
I almost actually, it was funny because they ended up needing, I don't know, something happened with casting, and the character of the son, they needed someone to be cast for that too. And so I was trying to get my nephew to do it, but my sister was a little too shy about it. So it ended up not working out. And I was so sad because I really, really wanted my nephew to play that role. I think that would be great. But
do you enjoy in front of the camera roles? Do you enjoy doing that?
I don't mind it. I don't know if it's like, I don't know if I have the patience for it. Like, I've never done like a speaking or like a supporting or like a lead role or anything like that. So maybe in like that case, I might. But when pretty much as like a side character, as an extra, non-speaking, it's just a bunch of waiting around, and I kind of like to stay busy, so
Yeah.
not being productive during that time is kind of like,
Yeah.
so.
Well, you have a speaking role in the upcoming Life on Bourbon. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was a role I literally just found out about. So I'm actually ADing for the Life on Bourbon is a TV pilot based right in New Orleans, right on Bourbon Street, and I'm doing the AD work, and then Armando, he decided to let me know in a rehearsal the other day, hey, you're gonna be playing the driver, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is great. Had no idea. And he just decided to throw me in there. Said why not? I'm like, I'm always down. Like I said, whatever it is that we need to do in order to like get us to the next phase. And I never mind making cameos. And a lot of the upstream production or upstream pictures, short films that I've done, I have had some sort of cameo or small like role. Not usually speaking. Sometimes it just depends. But so it's not an unusual thing for me. And I think oftentimes when I'm like directing, and even when assisting directing, like I have the urge to like kind of help an actor, better deliver a line. So, you
Right.
know,
Right.
I think it's I never did any theater thing growing up, but I think, the idea and the pizzazz behind it, it always comes to me once I see the lines, the script, and
Right.
everything being set up.
Right. Well, being in front of the camera, that also kind of goes with some of the modeling that you've done. Can you tell us about some of the brands and the modeling things that you've done?
Yeah, so again, a lot of like small things. So when I moved to New York, I was just like, why not try this thing that I've never tried before? So I immediately kind of got hooked up with a few different shoots. One was for like the sunglasses company, which is really fun, and they gave us a free pair of sunglasses. So that was super random, but it paid us. And the picture came out cool. Another was for another like kind of independent photographer. He just needed, he needed to try out his new camera. He needed some film shots for some campaign or some company he was working for. Me and him have worked together a few times at this point, and so that was fun. And it's always just super interesting because film is super different than digital. So,
Right.
and I don't usually shoot on film. So when I do see people shoot on film, I'm always super amazed, and I'm like, wow, this is fun and this is great. And then, I did a lot of modeling for this, it's mostly a women's sustainable athleisure brand,
Mm.
but they do have a men's line as well, but it's called Woven.
Mm.
So I did there was like, kind of like a streetwear campaign, a streetwear, drop in some clothing that they dropped a little over a year ago, about a year and a half ago. And I was one of the main models for that campaign, and had a lot of fun doing it. Went out to LA, shot, did some photography out there, did some stuff in New York. Yeah, and I mean, I worked with that company a lot. I also like was a consultant for them, so it wasn't really
Yeah, you
too
managed a pretty
too hard.
major order for them, right?
I did, yes, I did, yeah. That was what I was that was what I kind of transitioned to doing because I kind of got connected with them when I was doing a little bit of content creation. Then they
Mm.
ended up kind of throwing me in a modeling campaign, and I was still helping them out with some consulting things. And then there was a lot going on within the company, and outside of myself that I had no parts on with leadership, and they needed someone to step in, and so they had me step in for about 6 months as director of operations, and there were quite a few projects to manage, as well as helping them get their whole wholesale business, back running. And there was a lot going on that side, but it was incredible in terms of the amount of
There
sorry
you go.
about
There's
that.
your audio back. You're
Um,
good.
yeah. I just muted myself. I didn't want that phone ringing to be. I mean, I know it'll get cut out anyway, but
Oh yeah.
just one of those things. Thinking about the editors.
I was gonna say that's right. That's how I can tell you're a filmmaker right there. Got
Yeah,
your
no,
own
I immediately was like, oh no,
camera.
must mute.
Can you tell me,
Um,
you have been involved with like numerous shoots for music videos and TV shows. Can you tell me a little bit about some of those?
yeah, so I mean, most of the music videos I've done were really when I was just starting out, post college. I'd worked with like a lot of independent artists and just, shot their music videos. Um, that was some of the content I was shooting before I was doing even like some of my event videography and wedding videography and like I just find myself shooting a lot of music videos, a lot of young and up and coming artists that would, just want, it was, we're still in the video age and, even through these podcasts, which are now, it's crazy that we consider video podcasts to be podcasts, but
Right?
it's
No,
a whole
wild.
nother, it's a whole nother topic, but a lot of the podcasts that, I have either been a part of or seen, um, this is this is before that. This is the beginning of when people were really realizing like, oh, like everybody can make a music video so long as you have the right equipment.
Right.
Which not everybody has the right equipment, and I didn't have the right equipment starting out. So a lot of those music videos, some of them were fun, some of them were like more effect heavy. I was also like kind of learning how to edit. It was really just me exploring and experimenting. But ultimately, I knew how to better tell a client's story, how to better tell a person's, how to better help them establish a brand. And so that's really what it was.
Absolutely.
Um, a lot of the things that I shoot now, I don't shoot weddings anymore as I got away from weddings. They were fun, but it's a different kind of story that I don't I think that it's its own industry and it's not the industry that I love.
Right. Right.
Um, but a lot of other things I do now are like more like events, some podcasts here and there, but a lot of events, all sorts of cool events. I mean, I've been to different conferences. Um, I've been to government events. I've been to galas. Um,
Wow.
I don't even know. Just so many like unique and different types of events. Fortunately, just because fashion shows, art shows. Um, yeah, no, I can't even think of the endless things that I get to go to sometimes. But it all just tends to come from just my network. And I didn't move to New York with a huge, huge network, but since I've been there and we're here, I've done a lot to like kind of get to know people and to just align myself and put myself in bigger rooms.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What advice would you give for any aspiring filmmakers that are trying to find their way?
Our phones, while our phones are capable of so much, I think that it's important to recognize that, just because everybody can be a director of photography, everybody can be a director, everybody can be a producer, doesn't mean everyone should. I think it's really important to try out a lot of different roles, figure out where you fit in.
Right.
You might be a really good grip, you might be a really good gaffer, you might really enjoy doing DIT work, and it's important to like kind of figure these things out. You might prefer art department and doing being a set decorator as opposed to directing, um, and also understand that just because you do one thing doesn't mean you can't do another. So
Yeah.
don't just because you started off as a PA doesn't mean you have to only be a PA. Doesn't mean you have to stay as a PA. Work your way up, and there are tons and tons of productions happening. And so if there's an opportunity for a job that you may not be inexperienced in, like try to sign up for it, try to take it, do your research, and just
Yeah.
see what it takes to do that job, and just try to do it. If there are productions that people can't always pay crew for, so try to get on set and say, hey, I really want to learn how to do this. Can I be, you know, I don't know, if you want an AD, for instance, say, hey, can I be second or third AD? Usually people have third ADs, but hey, it happens on bigger productions. But, whatever it takes, it's kind of like, if you really want to get into the industry, you kind of got to hustle and like kind of grind and network and always continue to build positive connections.
Yeah. And you mentioned, everything that the phones are capable of doing these days. I'm curious because I know that you have worked with, AI tools before. What impact do you think AI is going to have on the filmmaking space?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I mean, I think the scariest impact is that AI can, we can make AI movies now, right? We can make
Yeah.
AI TV shows now, right? Why hire a whole crew of people, pay them, hire all these actors, pay them, when you can maybe just, pay for the rights to use a few actors' faces, maybe,
Right.
and you can have AI do the whole production.
Yeah.
I think it's both amazing because, again, from a storytelling standpoint, it's like me and you now have the ability to tell our stories at the same level. We have the tools, at least, to tell our stories at the same level as, say, Jordan Peele or like Steven Spielberg. We have the ability to do that.
Right.
However, again, does that dilute the industry? Does that take away people's jobs? It can, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I do think that it's going to automate some of the process. I used AI, for Life on Bourbon when I was tagging the script. I
Yeah.
made it really easy to, break down some of the details in the script and, get a nice report, broken down for me without having to think too much about it.
Absolutely.
As opposed to the old school classic way through Excel or through pencil and paper. Those who know. But I think AI is gonna, we're just at the precipice of what AI is gonna do, right?
Right.
And so when it comes to the creative field, I think I'm a little bit more optimistic, as these are industries where, even thinking about Life on Bourbon, it's a blood, sweat, and tears kind of project.
Yeah.
So AI can't replace,
Mm.
when people are just putting their blood, sweat, and tears into something,
Right.
Um,
The passion still has to be there.
exactly. And I think, so long as, people are passionate about filmmaking, they're gonna go out and do it themselves. They're gonna, pick up a camera themselves and do it with their own hands, regardless of if they had AI to, make it as well.
Yeah.
And I think we'd be fools to believe that AI is going to replace, all of creativity.
Right. Right.
So.
Well, Gary, this has been an absolutely awesome conversation. If anybody out there listening could like to follow you, would like to check out Disco Fries, where can the people find you?
Yeah. So for me, you can find me on Instagram at just legend__Gary, like almost like from How I Met Your Mother, legendary, but it's
Oh,
legendary. Check out my website, Gary A. Murray. That's Murray MURRAY.com. Check out some of my work. For Disco Fries and my other past productions, you can check out upstreampictures.com. It has everything, as well as another podcast that a few of my buddies, they manage and run, called The Rap Beers. So definitely check that out as well.
Gary, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been awesome.
Thank you, Adrian. It's been awesome. It's been great being here. Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for listening. This has been Partnerships for Profit, presented by LeDuc Entertainment. Gary, thank you again.
See, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Partnerships for Profit. We hope you've gained valuable insights on how to form profitable partnerships and take your business to the next level. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Got a partnership story to share or someone you'd like to see featured on the show? Reach out to us. Until next time, keep building those partnerships for profit.